and ever again divine.
Join us today. So we have a very special show, and this show is really going to dive into the budgets of Fairfax County, but really dealing with the pay for teachers and how can we help fix that. I have a special guest. Ever since I moved here, she's been fantastic. Louise Epstein, longtime community advocate on educational issues. She's been a wealth of knowledge for myself, teaching me a lot of her secret trades of the road and what she's learned through the years.
Thank you, Tony.
And go ahead and explain a little bit more about what you've been doing.
Well, okay. So although my kids are older now, I was a full-time advocate starting around 2000, and I was very active in Fairfax County Association for the Gifted. I was a PTA officer and president at my daughter's schools. I was exposed to and learned about not only gifted ed, but I learned about special ed through one of my daughters. And English isn't a second language when my niece came to live with me and spoke Japanese as her primary language. And after my youngest graduated, I became active on the McLean Citizens Association, where I have chaired both the education and youth committees, and now the budget and taxation committee. So I investigated the budgets both of the school system and also of the county. But all my opinions tonight are mine and not those of the McLean Citizens Association.
Well, I think they're going to be fantastic opinions because the wealth of knowledge, and you've been around this community for how long?
Oh, we moved here and forever. But I've been a full-time sort of parent volunteer since 2000.
So that's a wealth of knowledge with the school system and in the community. And you know what we're seeing? I think I brought up to you what some of the stats I saw from the Department of Education, where they said since 1970 to present, there was a 152% increase in funding, but only an 8% increase in teacher pay. And so why such a disparity between the two?
Over the years, over the decades, what I've seen and what everyone has noticed is that both at the kindergarten through 12th grade level nationwide, and also at the college and university level, they've added more and more administrative and so-called support positions, and they haven't really changed very much the number of teachers per student, and so therefore we end up with a lot more administrators compared to the number of teachers.
We were talking about that, the amount of administrators and the amount of excess that we're having. And when we're talking, you start uncovering a lot of the redundancy that's happening within the county that Fairfax Public School has, such as human resources, such as, Fairfax County has, one Fairfax. And it just seems like Fairfax Public Schools mimicking the same thing with these administrators to run the same program where tax dollars are already going into those certain areas. Sorry. Hey, everyone, you know that this is, we have Mr. Finn sometimes going around. So that's what happens at times. Mr. Finn had to make his mark somewhere. And Mary is doing a fantastic job. And lights are back on. I did pay my bill today, so don't worry about it. It wasn't because I didn't pay my bill. But going back to what we're saying, it just seems like there's a lot of mimic going on. Considering that Fairfax County Public Schools fall under the community of Fairfax, fall under everything with the Board of Supervisors, why are we doing the same thing over and over again?
I think it's partly just tradition, that they feel the county supervisors say, well, we have our own HR department, for example. And then they say, and now the school board members who used to be appointed back until the mid 1990s, but now then they became elected. Well, they get to hire a superintendent, and the superintendent gets to create all these additional departments. And one of them is the HR department. But honestly, I don't see a lot of reason why we can't combine that particular department. There are some departments you can't combine. For example, instructional services, which is to say choosing curriculum and supervising it. That's not something the county board of supervisors really does. But a lot of this other stuff, you wonder, The county has an excellent facilities, group,
Yep.
and maybe they would be better suited to managing the construction process, especially since right now there's a disparity or a discrepancy between certain assumptions about how many kids are going to result from a given new development
Yeah.
between what the county assumes, which is more,
Yeah.
and what the school system assumes. I'm sorry, I can't remember which way it goes, but
Yeah.
whichever way. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's a great point. It's like you have two different entities and they both are working towards the same goal, such
Right.
as, development.
Right.
Obviously developments are going up, they're processing, new developments, apartment buildings, so on and so
That's
forth.
right.
Right. And at a certain point in time, you got to restructure schools, either add school or restructure, grow it out, or redistrict, or do
Yeah.
something of that nature. You would think the best thing to do, since everything's being led through Fairfax County, is just to have the facilities led through Fairfax County to take care of the schools, because it's just another government building.
Right. And that's especially true now that the school system is heading towards what they call wraparound services or community schools, where they're combining sort of traditional county services and functions in some neighborhoods with the schools.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be combining them anyway, you do wonder why we need to involve two sets of people, i.e., the county facilities people and the school system's facilities people.
You know what it is? It's something that I saw in government. It's called
Yeah.
bureaucracy. It's called bog down. That's what slows everything down, because everyone has to have a say in something. So now you have, for a facility to get something done, there's certain areas, I suppose, certain areas around the school that is controlled by the county. Then you have the school. And so you're having this little fight going on, what they're going to do, what you're going to do, and so on. It makes it inefficient. And
it does. And the other thing is that, the schools have a certain amount of green space or land around them.
Yep.
And sometimes that abuts some parkland that is managed by the county's park authority. And, it would be wonderful if the park authority and the schools were sort of more, working together more
Yeah.
closely, because sometimes the best answer might be to, redesign the way that the driveways go or that the parking lot is structured or whatever. But right now, they sort of have to sort of stay separate until they feel like they need to combine, which is
Yeah.
also a problem with sidewalks.
Yeah, definitely.
You want kids to walk to school. I mean, you're so fit, it's incredible. But, you want little kids to get a little exercise
Yeah.
and to walk and bike to school. And of course, to do that safely, they need sidewalks.
Yep.
Or trails.
Yep.
But right now, the sidewalks and the trails, for the most part, are funded and designed by the county, which is great. But the schools, in turn, they are setting up a situation where if there aren't enough sidewalks within walking distance, they start providing bus service to a kid who may live only a quarter of a mile away from a school. Why? Because there's no safe way for the child to walk to school.
And that goes into the development. That goes
Yes.
into the development of these schools, working with the county.
Right.
Where if it was established by the county on the development of the structures, because if you think about it, these are structures, has nothing to do with education.
That's right.
Has everything to do with space and structure and the size of a classroom, which is very easy. They can actually create these things in the very beginning, where you build the school and then you start building the community around that,
Right.
where it now develops and feeds in with these sidewalks or bike trails off to the side that leads right in, as opposed to you have one entity creating the school and then a whole nother entity creating the community,
Sidewalks, yeah.
and nothing matches.
Yeah, and I see this in my current volunteer work, because we have some parents who live, near me, and they're very frustrated because they say, "Why are our children being required to take a bus to a nearby school instead of the county building a sidewalk?" But the county's response is, "Well, we don't have infinite dollars to build sidewalks." Which is they call active transportation. And so you think, well, the school system gets more bond money than any of the other functions. They get more bond money than the transportation department of the county or than the park authority, by far, of the county. And you think, maybe some of that school bond money, which is used to build and renovate school buildings, could also be dedicated to sort of filling in the gaps where so kids could walk to school
Yeah,
if they live that close to the school, which is good for everybody.
it's fantastic for everybody.
Yeah.
But you know what it is? It's really looking at the school having a separate entity and keeping it that way, as opposed to breaking off some of the jobs, such as the HR department, such as the department that deals with, say, the retirement.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Fairfax County has retirement, you know.
And actually, the Fairfax County retirement system has 3 separate pension plans, one for policemen, one for firefighters and sheriffs, office people, and the third for other employees, which in fact also includes 20% of the employees of the school system already. The school system, for the other 80% of its employees, they use the state pension plan as the sort of base.
Yeah.
And then they layer on top of that this little supplemental pension plan, which is an unusual benefit that you don't see elsewhere around the state. Well, we have a very well-run, well-oiled machine, I think, on the county side with an executive director who's very knowledgeable, who's been doing it for a long time, and he manages those 3 county pension plans. It would be great if he could just absorb and sort of supervise whatever was going on with the school system's little supplemental pension plan. Instead, there are over 30 full-time equivalent employees who are managing the school system's little supplemental pension plan, and they're minus an executive director right now, and they're in brand new office space, which is not in the same building as the county's pension plans. So they're off sort of doing their own thing with their own advisors, with their own people, when they could benefit from the knowledge base of the people who've been managing the county pension plans.
And it's funny, when we're going through some of the knowledge that we were talking about back and forth a couple of days back, we're going through some of these higher level jobs, which are well into 6 figures.
Yeah.
And you start adding those things up, and you're looking at a couple million here, a couple million there, with all these little jobs that are doing, literally mimicking.
Yeah.
Because when you create like the retirement plan and you have a staff for that, you have the staff, but then you also have the higher ups of bureaucracy level, which sucks up a lot of the jobs.
Yeah.
Or a lot of the money, a lot of the budget goes to that.
Right.
Where if you just take that, push it over to the county, now you're opening, say, regular jobs opened up, but you're eliminating all the higher echelon, which are the 6-figure jobs. And so it sounds.
What one could say
Sounds smelly.
many, many millions of dollars.
Yeah.
There would be fewer sort of well-paid, bureaucratic type positions in
Exactly.
the school system. And then that money could be used for any number of other things.
Yeah, and that's what I want to talk to you about, because it seems like, when we start digging in and start cutting some of that fat away.
Yeah.
To jobs that are just redundant.
And that's the best word for it, redundant.
It's completely redundant. Or if you want to use another word, taking care of your buddies, type of stuff, creating more positions to take care of other people and put positions in where you're just creating a whole new position where you don't need to. But if you start taking care of some of those things, you start trimming that fat and start working through and realigning things, then we start having more money that's coming out for salaries, and which can definitely go into the teachers, because where we're sitting at right now with teacher pay, I mean, it's horrendous. With an 8% increase across the board. I mean, this is through the nation, and if it's happening here, it's happening every district across the nation.
And it's not that we can't fill the positions with a body, but we want to basically have the pick of the litter when we're hiring teachers, because they are our front line. They're the people who matter the most to all of our children. And if we have a situation where we're just, keeping up with the regional averages for salaries, and we're a higher cost place to live than, some of the other places like Prince William County. Then a lot of teachers are going to decide, something, why should I commute an hour to school, right, to a school here? Why not take a job in Loudoun County or
Mhm.
Prince William County
Yep.
or elsewhere, or go into an entirely different field. And,
Yep.
it's really sad. And this, in part, this is a national problem.
Yes, it
But
is.
we can't assume that because it's a national problem that we can't do better than the national average.
Oh, we can.
Yeah.
And when you start looking at, so I'm a small business owner myself.
Mhm.
And when I left out of agency, I worked in a security company. It was a mom and pop security company. I
Mhm.
became chief security officer over there. And I worked with two very good, savvy, business-minded people. And we're able to take a small mom and pop security company out of DC and
Mhm.
expand it to a mid-size nationwide.
Oh.
And one thing that he taught me was this. We may not be able to give more money at times, because it's very competitive in the security
Right.
field. But one thing you can do is give respect towards your employees.
Right.
And then once you start giving respect to your employees, then your employees are prideful. They work harder off of that.
And they
Then,
don't quit.
yeah, exactly. And
They
then
don't
more
quit.
contracts came in, better
Yeah.
contracts. So then
Mhm.
we're able to raise rates for them
Yep.
and increase pay. And it just works out that way. So when I start looking at retention of employees, because that's what we're looking at, retention of employees. I mean, teachers are employees.
Yeah.
How do I
Yes.
retain,
That's right.
as a small business owner, how do I retain the best of the best? Knowing that we live in a community that is very high. And even the surrounding communities are pretty high. Loudoun County is pretty high. But right outside Loudoun County, you got West Virginia,
And it gets cheaper.
which
Yes.
is
Lower cost of
substantially
living.
cheaper,
Yeah.
right? So how do we keep that in here? I start looking at, first I look at the people. If your employees are not happy, if they're not being
Right.
respected, the
Mhm.
teacher's not being respected, that's first and foremost. I learned that no matter how much money you can give someone, if they don't feel respected,
They
at a certain
leave.
point, they're going to leave. They're going to get tired.
And that is actually, ironically, part of the problem with creating all of these central administrative positions that are better paid,
Mhm.
because those people, in part, micromanage the teachers in the
Exactly.
classroom. The pacing guides are a perfect illustration. I still have some friends who are still teaching in our public schools. I
Mhm.
used to have a ton of them.
Yeah.
And they would complain to me nonstop about these pacing guides and other curricular materials or lesson plans that
Mhm.
were being foisted on them by people who hadn't been a classroom teacher for 5, 10, 20 years. And they say they don't work,
Mhm.
but these teachers were being forced to use them, or at least to pretend to use them.
Yeah.
And it made them feel like they weren't respected as professionals. And they began to think, maybe I should go find another way to spend my time. I'm
Yeah.
not being treated with respect.
Yep.
I have very hard working conditions sometimes, for a variety of other reasons. And I'm not making that much money. Maybe I should go do something else.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head. When I found mid managers, even in the government,
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of mid managers just sitting right there,
Right.
walking around with their GS 14. They're not 15 yet, or GS 14, trying to figure out, you know, establish themselves
Mhm.
in some way, separate themselves from the
Yeah.
pack. So then that's what they start doing. They start creating needless jobs for others, start micromanaging, starts pushing their little initiative because they think, okay, I'm gonna start separating myself because I want the next
That's right.
promotion. Because that's all they're worried about is the next promotion
Mhm.
when you get to that level. And so you start seeing that. You start seeing the micromanage. You start seeing, people going around and disciplining other, employees
Right.
just because they have nothing better to do. And it's because
Mhm.
you create this such a redundant, a bureaucracy in the
Right.
middle right there that everyone's vying for the next level up.
And it's even beyond that, I'd say it's almost like the old Russian model of control,
Mhm.
where if you have bureaucrats whose job is to full time or almost full of time, make sure that everyone does stuff just the way they want them to do
Yeah.
stuff, right? Then you get something sort of like the old, communist Russian system where
Oh, yeah,
everyone has to
yeah.
do the same thing at the same
No,
time
I
on the
agree.
same day at the same hour.
No, yeah,
You know,
I agree, and that's just one of the issues that I've noticed. Being a small business owner
mhm.
and building companies up in the civilian sector, I noticed that. Treatment of your people. If you're too top heavy on top, they're not gonna have jobs, and it's kind of a waste. You need to trim that fat. And then second to that, what's the incentive for teachers to stay around here? If they're not getting treated right, then you look at the pay. Even when we get to an average pay of Loudoun County.
Mhm.
It still incentivized me not, to live in Loudoun County because it's closer to West Virginia,
Right.
a lot cheaper over there
Right.
than me coming all the way, down into
Yes.
Fairfax. So we're going to have an issue with that no matter what. And then, you know, the housing market over here, housing market is skyrocketing, and all,
It's expensive.
it all ties in.
Yeah.
I mean, property taxes are high. Everything's high over
Mhm.
here because, our county just wants to keep raising taxes, and board of supervisors decide that they just want to give themselves a raise, which I don't agree with. Even
Well,
the school board decided to give themselves a raise.
yes, although that's a small part of both the county budget and the school
Yeah.
system budget. But what I
But
will
why I look at it, it's optic.
it is optics. It's
It's optic.
optics.
It's
Yeah.
it's when our teachers, you were showing me some stuff where teachers, they had excess money
Yeah.
over in the budget because they didn't have
Yeah.
teachers filled, and they're like,
Right.
oh, we're going to roll this money into other areas. Well, here's my question: why aren't those filled? That's the first and foremost. When I look at open positions, there's two reasons. One, you can't retain anybody
Mhm.
because you have poor management system or something's broken the system,
Right.
and or B, you have poor recruiting. You just don't know how to recruit. So I don't think it's recruiting. I think it's the system that's set up. I do have I shared some ideas with you on what I like to see happen. And I think, once I get in on November 7th and start working through that budget, start trimming these things, we have to incentivize
Yeah.
our teachers to stay here. So my plan is to take, okay, what's the average around and increase it by 5%.
And I think money helps.
Yeah.
I think working conditions help, in terms of, making sure that they neither have too much
Mhm.
paperwork that is needless that they still have
Yeah.
to fill out,
Mhm.
and also that the people who are supervising them are doing it properly.
Yeah.
Because, but the other thing that's really terrible, and people don't realize this, is a lot of the extra found money from the budget reviews
Yeah.
is because there's so much turnover. Well, when
Mhm.
we lose a third year or a fifth year or an eighth year teacher with that many years of experience, we are losing someone who, on a very steep learning curve, improved a lot between when she graduated from college
Mhm.
and
Yep.
5 years later. She's now able to manage the classroom. She
Yep.
knows what works and what doesn't work.
Mhm.
And she's decided, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Well, what do we get? We get another 23-year-old or
Yeah.
someone who has never managed a classroom before.
Yeah.
And that's why, of course, we're always saving money. But we don't want to save money
No,
like that.
no,
you know?
not. This is not an industry where you want to save money. It's the same thing, when you're dealing with in the security realm. Once
Mhm.
you get someone that's seasoned, has been around, that understands, that can identify
Yeah.
threats and risk, you know, you don't want to lose those people because they bring something that's different as opposed to getting someone brand new.
Right. They
That's
bring
just
judgment.
exactly. And
Yeah.
when I was in Secret Service,
Mhm.
huge attrition rate over there. People were always, and still is, because it's the same thing happens. The cost of living to live close. I will tell you, most Secret Service people, and I know I'm talking to a lot of Secret Service people. You guys don't live in
Okay.
Fairfax County, guys. A lot of them live in West Virginia.
Really? And they commute here?
They commute. I live in Culpeper. I couldn't afford it. I live in Culpeper.
That's quite a commute.
Yeah.
I mean, I know exactly
A-
where that is. I have a second home someplace close to
A lot
Culpeper.
of Secret Service
Yeah.
lives either in Harper's Ferry,
That's pretty
Charlestown,
far. Yeah.
Culpeper. They live in those areas. They don't live close by, especially when they're starting off and they start establishing themselves,
Yeah.
because you just can't afford it. So I understand with the Secret Service
Mhm.
how it is.
Yeah.
Because the distance, there's nowhere you can live,
Right.
because you just can't afford.
Mhm.
And over there, I had my ideas what we do, incentive, for like MPD. There was incentives for housing if you lived in DC.
Right. And there's an incentive for housing if you work for the city of Alexandria.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have some incentives or some, housing related benefits in Fairfax County, is my understanding, but they sort of disappeared.
Yeah.
And I think it's because the people in charge decided that it was not a priority of theirs to reserve apartments for our first responders, for our police, for our firefighters, or for our teachers.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of new development going up.
Yeah.
We have hundreds of units going up. You would think that they could set aside some of those units, especially on the Silver Line or on 267, because those are huge developments.
Yeah.
For people who work for the county in those key positions.
And the key positions always be firefighters, medical personnel, police, and teachers.
Yeah.
And once you have those people living in the community, I mean, you have a full circle of all services right there, and it builds a bigger, stronger bond within the community.
Right. And I call those core governmental services.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there are other kinds of services too, but they're not all as core.
Yeah. I mean, we could take the politicians, shove them somewhere
No.
else. No, but those are things that I look at coming on the school board, because I always say I'm going to win, positive attitude. We're going to go in there. We're going to have a great time changing a lot of these things. But those are things I want to look at. We need to keep our teachers. The only thing I can affect is the teachers. Now try to push it out to board supervisors and say, hey, you guys got to do this too. We got to have areas. Give them housing allowance to be able to live in the area, the district that they're serving in,
Right.
and each district is going to be a little bit different. Prices are a little bit different. Springfield's a little bit different from, say, here in Providence, So we really I want to look at that and say, okay, what kind of housing allowance in addition to increasing your
Makes
pay
sense, yeah.
to keep you here, because it's better for the community. And when it's better for the community, it's better for the kids, because what you're seeing now is you're seeing the teachers live in the same neighborhoods that the kids are living in.
Yeah, and you see them sticking around longer. And again, when teachers get so much more effective after 3 to 5 years of experience in the classroom, you don't want them to leave.
No, you don't.
You want them to stick around, and kids will learn so much more. And that turnover, which some people would say, oh, well, it's a way to make things cheaper. But it's not a great way to make things cheaper if you just keep turning over experienced personnel and hiring people who don't know what they're doing yet and have to learn on the job.
Well, see, because they lose the fact that the most important thing we're doing is educating our kids. And the education of them is priceless. And so we should do everything we can to make sure that we're giving all the resources to include keeping teachers, having incentives for them to stay over here to live in the neighborhoods where the kids are at. I remember back when I was a kid, I had a teacher that lived right down the street. Hated it.
Really?
Okay. Saw her at school, and I saw her right here.
Okay.
But you kind of watched yourself, like you're more respectful out there, because you know that you're going to see, Miss Smith, on Monday morning, so it kind of builds that, okay, I'm gonna stay respectful and everything. And to me, we're losing a lot of that, not having these key people. Like I knew in my neighborhoods where the police officers were, where they lived, and you could tell, people know in the community, criminals do know where police are living.
Right.
Kind of stay away from those areas.
Yeah.
Firefighters too. Anyone that works in the government type of, firefighters or police, if they're living area, people tend to know that's a neighborhood that has police that live there.
And don't bother them.
Don't bother their neighborhood. So it's kind of incentive to keep them there to reduce down the crime, especially in today's atmosphere where all the crime is increasing.
Oh, crime has increased so much. It's really terrible. It's one of my current projects.
Oh, I know.
Not school specific.
We need to work on that another time.
Yeah.
But those are some of the initiatives I want to start off. Increase the pay, get it to level, and then increase it by 5.
Some housing benefits.
Housing allowance.
Yeah.
Across the board. The other thing I want to do is give a $2,000 like a stipend or a reimbursement type of thing, where they could write, they could go get things for themselves. That's what I look at is, coming from the security field and being a SWAT officer, doing counterintelligence, you become a master in your trade. And being a master in a trade, there's certain, if I was instructing tactics,
right.
There's certain things that I know that I like to bring in addition,
right,
because I know that this really helps the student, the learning curve. It helps them a lot. And I know these things because it works better for me, because not everyone's teaching style is the same.
True.
My teaching style is different from anyone else. And, being an instructor in the military and also in the government, I have certain teaching styles that I lean towards, different from others.
Mhm.
And so there's certain things that I would bring into the classroom that I knew enhanced me.
You know, it would be great. So I always thought that for the people who are both on the school board, but also all of those central administrators, they need to occasionally be in classrooms
Oh, they do.
to see, and the fact that you have this background where you taught adults, obviously,
Yeah.
not kids.
Well,
But
some of them were military, so it's kind of
it's like teenagers. Okay.
like teenagers.
Okay. But but I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Because if you go into the classrooms and you have that experience once a month or whatever
Yeah.
it is, then you have a better understanding of the challenges that teachers face with classroom management. And you might not, as a school board member, for example, vote
Mhm.
for some changes in the discipline policies that make it harder for teachers to do their job.
Yeah, no, I agree. And teachers, they have their own teaching styles.
Mhm.
And that's, getting on the school board, I want to make sure that we empower the teachers because they're master of arts. I will tell you this. I've talked to a lot of teachers. No teachers go into this for the money.
Oh, that's for sure.
There is no money into it. It's kind of like the people that go into the military. They're not
Mhm.
going into the military for money.
Service.
They're going, yeah, exactly. They're going in for a
Service.
sense of service.
Mhm.
So I think when you look at that, they're going in for a sense of servitude. That means they're going to do everything they can because they have a passion for something.
Mhm.
And so, what do you need to do as administrators of a school board? You need to tap into their passion, give them the tools to be the best that they can.
Right.
And every time I talk with teachers, I tell them that all I want to do for you is make you the best that you can. And how can I do that for you?
Right. And part of that is just where you assign them and what you have them teach.
Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes there's somebody who is great at teaching, let's say middle school geometry.
Yeah.
But not necessarily that great at teaching kids who are still struggling to learn arithmetic.
Yeah.
But what we've seen happen in the middle schools around the county is that they have tried over the decades to make sure that there aren't teachers who get to sort of specialize in,
Yeah.
one or two classes,
Yeah.
that they have to sort of teach the full range, whatever that
Yeah.
means. And so, getting people who really have a lot of content knowledge, I think,
Mhm.
makes a huge amount of sense. And then getting them
Mhm.
so that they're allowed to convey that content knowledge and use it to work with kids.
It's
is great.
And that's, going back to, having the teachers be masters of their own skill sets.
Mhm.
You know, going in and learning everything I learned through my time and having a vast knowledge of different aspects of intelligence, operations, and different things. There's always certain areas that you really, because of who you are, you gravitate more towards. It just clicks and it's able to just,
Absolutely.
I'm just better at this little piece right here. I could do everything else,
That-
but I'm kind of better at, like, this is it for me.
And that's exactly what some of the greatest teachers that my kids had would say about whatever. They say, yes, I can teach those other subjects too, or yes, I could teach those other levels too. But what I really am great at and what the kids appreciate and the parents appreciate is when I teach something that I've done really well
Yeah.
for a long time.
And let me give you this example of that. So I have a great buddy of mine, Bob Horace. He is a retired master sergeant from Delta, was in the agency with me.
Okay.
Right now he has his own, he teaches his own shooting courses that he teaches. He's an instructor. So he teaches and he loves it. He loves teaching rifle handgun, basic to like yourself. He loves that. Now for me,
Yeah.
same skill levels, both of us.
But you would never want to teach me.
I'm not that person.
Yes.
Now, what I do like teaching is more advanced stuff.
Students, yeah.
Like advanced stuff,
Yeah.
and I have a passion for that. He has a passion to teach the layman person
The ranked beginners.
that never picked it up, say this is a
Yes.
bad end, this is a safe end type of stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's not saying that I can't do it. I can, but you're not going to see the same passion. You're going
Right.
to see like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go through the numbers.
I swear this is so similar to so many conversations that
Yeah.
I've had with individual teachers over the years.
Because instruction is instruction, regardless if you're instructing someone say how to drive different type of cars,
Oh yeah.
or instruct them in a subject.
Right.
It's instructing, and so I can relate. I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, how does that relate? It does relate, because educating kids or educating people, teaching people, it's all the same. How do you tap into to bring out the best of them? Now, if I'm teaching a subject that I really don't even care about, I'm not going to bring out the best in them.
That's for sure.
I'm going to give, like, at the end of the day, you're going to get C students out of this, because I don't have a passion for that. Where my buddy Bob,
Would do better with those
he'll
kids.
take the same one,
Yeah.
do better. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
that he's a better instructor. It just means he has a passion for that.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm when I look at the teachers, I look at the same thing. I want to figure out, okay, what are you passionate about?
Right. And what are you really good at?
Mm-hmm.
Because usually the two are the same, but not always.
Yeah.
And that is really important, to match the teacher's expertise and passion with what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that sometimes doesn't happen. Teachers sometimes are punished. There's like a retaliation thing going on where, the principal doesn't like them for some reason. So suddenly they don't get to teach the courses that they're great at. And they're instead assigned to teach courses they're not so great at, just to make them feel bad. And I saw that actually over the years when my daughters were at Thomas Jefferson. I saw a few teachers who my daughters and all of their friends and classmates thought were fabulous. But for some reason, they ticked off the principal or an assistant principal at the time, and then they got assigned to teach a very different kind of class. and you thought, what a huge waste. Why are you taking somebody with a PhD from an Ivy League university in organic chemistry and not allowing that person to teach the AP chemistry classes?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, it's all because you got managers that mismanage. They don't look what's best for the end product. When I look at it, business-minded sense right now, operational sense from my time in the agency and the military. So I look at the end of the day, what's my product? What's the end product I'm putting out there?
Yeah.
And we got to look at that. So when leaders are making decisions based upon their feelings and not based upon the end product that I'm trying to produce out here, then they're leading from their selfish standpoint. They're leading from narcissism and not leading from a heart of helping.
Right. But part of that is, even if they want to lead from the heart, right now they are responding to the incentives that the school board and the superintendent and all of the assistant superintendents have given them to instead do things a certain way.
Yeah.
And so, you think, okay, if they're being told that the only thing that matters is to try and get every last kid to pass their standard of learning exam in some subject, well, they're not going to focus as much attention either on the kids who will never pass, but who will get better if they get attention, or on the kids who could have passed the summer before the class started, in fact, but they don't need to be taught anything in order to pass.
Yeah, no.
And that has been a problem ever since we got standard of learning exams in Virginia.
Yeah, because now it's just a number. It's just trying to get them through the door with this number, and that's it. They're not. We're taking the personal aspect of instruction and leadership, or I'm sorry, instruction and teaching out of it, and just made it into like a more of a robot thing.
Yeah,
I'm going to train you to take this test and score this on this test, and that's it.
Right. Yeah, they drill them to get a passing score.
And what I found, myself going through various schools and various things, and I'll tell you this, that when I was in school, I wasn't the best student. I was at C average.
Well, now that C would be like an A minus probably, but go ahead.
Well, it took me time to really, figure out myself and mature. Yeah, it definitely takes that. But I did have some teachers that I really connected and had fun with. And they were able to tap into certain areas of me to bring more passion out. And then you look at those kids, that are sitting there. Are we really designing? Are we allowing the teachers to really take the time, or are we doing what we do as far as a test, where I'm just going to drill this in? We did that in the military too. Some of our course we did. They had to take a test, and it was they couldn't miss anything, and they had to figure out what word go here, what went here, and pretty much they just learned a pattern, so to speak, of what goes there, but they didn't learn the essence of what that meant. Like they didn't know the true meaning
Right.
of what
They memorized what they needed to memorize.
exactly.
Yeah.
And for me, that's, because I went through some of the stuff like that. It's like short-term memory. You're
Mhm.
going to memorize that for
And
that
you
period of
forget
time.
it.
And then
And you
once it's
forget it.
done, it's done.
Yeah.
But you know what you do remember is when you're actually having true instruction, when you're trying to figure out something and it relates to real world. And now you're having that teacher being able to connect the dots. And now it clicks in. It's like, oh, now I get it.
Right.
As opposed to just memorizing something, you're understanding the big picture of things.
Right.
And that knowledge stays with you all your life. And for me, I want to get back to that type of instructing. I want to take all the frivolous things that we're doing and allow time for the teachers to really, work their
Focus.
craft
Yeah.
and focus on kind of showing the bigger picture of things. How does this relate
Right.
in life?
Right.
Such as math. A
Yeah.
lot of people go with the math. It's like, how does this relate?
Yeah.
You start showing how these equations relate to, say, the space shuttle go up in the air,
Mhm.
because it's all math and everything, calculations.
Yeah. Tell me about it, my daughters. But go ahead. Yeah.
No, but it's
Yeah.
the same thing. Some of the hardest, math equations, if you go to
Mhm.
sniper school,
Mhm.
I
Oh.
mean, you're looking at, distance, angles, you're looking at heights,
Okay.
you're looking at the windage, you're looking
Yep.
at the angle of the movement
Mhm.
of the world, pretty much. There's
Mhm.
all
A
calculations.
lot of physics, basically.
There's a lot of physics,
Yeah.
to include bullet weight
Mhm.
and the amount of velocity coming out and the twist on how tight it stays.
So did you end up having to relearn the
Oh,
math that
everything.
you had memorized and forgotten when you went to sniper school then?
You realize, that math is part of everything. And you start realizing, how does this play into a lot of things? Understanding, the different angles,
Mhm.
how gravitational pull pulls down on it based off the weight. It's going to pull the lighter, the heavier it's going to
Mhm.
pull, to include, the density of the air, high density air, low density air. It's going to have a different effect. And that's why, when people say, and they talk, you're just in the military and stuff, it's like, there's a lot of stuff that you have to
Well,
learn.
yeah, and that's true. And it's also true of a lot of engineering kind
Mhm,
of information.
mhm.
I really do think a lot of people talk a good game about how we need more what used to be called vocational education, but which now is called career and technical
Yeah.
education. And people talk about it, but I don't know that the school system has really been able to wrap its hands around that topic and do it really well
Yeah.
across the board. We have some academies
Mhm.
in some of our high schools, and they have some great classes, and they have some that aren't so great.
Yeah.
And then we have a whole bunch of high schools that don't have many classes at
Mhm.
all. And we don't even have a system that allows a student from one high school that does not have all those
Mhm.
classes to just transfer full time to an adjoining school that has them, because that's not considered a permissible excuse for transferring.
Hmm.
We don't have a pure sort of school choice kind of situation.
Yeah.
We have you go to school where you live, except for a few things, and that's not one of them.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
we really cared, then we would make that one of those things.
And that's one of the things I really want to deal with the teachers, who identify what the strengths of students, working with counselors, working with
Mhm.
the parents, working with the teachers and the students, figure out what the students are passionate about, and then developing their educational plan based upon that. Talking with a lot of teachers, they're on board with that kind of stuff because, like I said,
That's what
they
they want to
came
do.
into it for a certain reason. They
Yeah.
want to see, people achieve. They want to see kids achieve. They want
Yeah.
to see, hey, I taught that kid and back in middle school, and look what that kid's doing now. It's
It's
prideful for them because it's their legacy.
Yep.
And so when you take that portion out into you just make them into robots,
Mhm.
just passing
It's no
people
fun.
through, then they're looking at their own personal legacy. What did I do? Did I even impact any child?
Mhm.
And I guarantee if you go down to the root of why every teacher went into teaching, it's because they want to have a legacy that they can look at and say, I did this, I
Right.
helped these kids, these kids achieved, and I was part of that.
Right.
that growth, which is the most amazing thing. And, when we start, like, we go back to budgets and teachers, we could give a lot of money out. But at the end of the day, if we're not allowing these teachers to be the craftsmen of their profession,
Right.
to tap into their strengths and say, hey, listen, we're going to unbind the chains on your hands. We're going to let you do what you need to do. That's why I want to give that a reimbursement of $2,000 a year, so they can go buy extra tools, or they could take extra courses that they feel that they see that say, I need this to enhance myself, to help the kids out.
Right. And there's also a question about giving them time to do that, and what you want to encourage them to take. Because over the years, what I saw is that the school system here said, we're going to train some of the people in our Department of Instructional Services to be the professors of these courses. We'll persuade George Mason University or some other university to give credit for it. And so it was like more in-house training, which didn't necessarily teach them anything other than what the current party line was.
Yeah.
And I think it's better for them to be exposed, in particular, to more subject matter content, which is, instead of expecting them to go sit in a classroom with an adult who hasn't been in the classroom with kids for 20 years and learn how to be a better classroom teacher from that person. How about if they go and they learn about whatever the subject is that they're teaching?
Yeah.
If they are history teachers for 7th grade, which is, I believe, U.S. history, well, then, something, maybe they should be encouraged to go take some kind of class in U.S. history. And maybe one way to get them to feel like they are valued and worth more and valued more is to change the way they're paid in terms of their contracts, to build in some extra paydays, not for professional development by the people who are sitting in central headquarters, but to build in the ability to go and learn more about the subject they teach outside.
And we're going through all the numbers and everything. You're showing me, the difference of contracts, between, and how administrators get more overall. And that just blows my mind. We're giving more days of pay to administrators where they're not in the classroom. They're not teaching the kids, but yet we're not doing that for teachers. And like you said, I'm better off doing that, reimbursement, and say $2,000, and say maybe you have a person that is learning, say, world history. That's what they teach. And maybe one of the subjects they will like to go do is maybe go do something in, say, South America.
Right.
To go, hey, I want to go. There's a good program that's going to take people down to really study down in South America, the ancient, tribes of South America. So I could take that real life things that I see, and bring it back to enhance myself. And those, you're going to get, at the end of the day, you're going to get a better product. You're going to get a teacher that's going to be energized, excited. So now
about their subject,
they just went down there and they just learned about the ancient history of South America, whatever it may be. They're going to come back with that passion, and they're going to tell the kids, oh, guess what I saw out there? It's amazing. And not just look at pictures in a book.
Right.
So they're bringing life experience to the kids. And when you start bringing that life experience and start talking about the different things you see,
then the kids get excited too.
And their eyes open up to wow, there's more in the world. I want to explore these things. And so now these kids are getting excited, and now they start looking at different subjects, like, maybe I want to be, move into this subject where I could be archaeologist and I could go down and do these things. You never know unless that real life experience starts coming back, and it takes away from plain text and puts it in real heart. And you're only going to get that if the teachers have that coming out.
Right. And it's going to cost more than $2,000, for those courses.
Oh, yeah.
But, maybe that what can happen is that the contract lengths for teachers could be expanded to include, a couple of weeks where they can, if they want to, they can go off and take those classes.
Yeah.
So they're still collecting salary. And conversely, we've been extending the contracts for example, assistant principals, They used to be on 11-month contracts for the most part, but now they're almost all on 12-month contracts.
And I don't understand what they're doing.
You know, and during the summer, most of the schools are closed. They're not there all summer, right?
Yeah.
They're not there every day.
Yeah.
So maybe that's not the best use of our budget.
No,
And
it's not.
maybe it would be better to give the teachers time. It's sort of like university professors.
Yep.
One of my daughters is a physics professor, assistant physics professor. And part of her job is that she's always flying all over the world doing research with different scientists around the world. And then she comes back and she conveys that information and excitement to her college students.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the kind of thing that's great if our teachers were valued and treated sort of like that.
Yeah, and they should be. So you take all these administrators, shorten them down because they're already making well into six figures, and the teachers aren't. Shorten them down, increase for the teachers, add stuff like fellowships where they could go for a couple of days at different universities to really learn with other professors that are studying certain areas that they could bring good stuff back.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to get a better product out. You're going to get a happier teacher because they're active. Their mind is working still. They're just not the day in and day out, same thing. You know, they're going to get that passion back because they're going to be like, I could really teach my kids this. You know, I'm excited about bringing this and how I'm going to work this into my lesson plan. So you get more creativity. And it's just such an amazing thing. And I think we're getting at the 7-minute mark, and we can continue this on forever. I mean, because it's a very good subject. I mean, this subject, I think, you know, talking about the budget, talking about teachers and what we can do for the teachers. I mean, I don't think we've done enough, but I think we have some questions, right, Mary?
Yes.
I knew we were going to have some questions for this subject. Go ahead.
Okay, so first question, what particular admin posts should a new FCPS board cut?
Well, let's see. First off, you know, we have the one Fairfax. And with that, we got the diversity, inclusion, and everything else that goes with that.
And we have it duplicated.
And we have it
it on the county side, and we have it on the school
and we
system
just
side.
increased, I think, 3 or 4 new positions to that. That position needs to go. It's duplicating the same thing. We already have one Fairfax, and we're creating one Fairfax model here. We could just have representatives over there.
Over at the county.
Over the county.
Let the county
and they
diversity, equity, and inclusion people handle what needs
and
to
they
be
could come
handled.
over every once in a while and do what diversity, inclusion, training, what they need to do. Why have a full staff of that?
Right.
It makes no sense. And each one is well into 6 figures.
Yeah.
So I would start with that first and foremost because that's complete redundancy. And then from there, then go with a fine-tooth comb and find all the redundancy. What about you? What do you think?
You know, I sort of look at the number of what's called specialists and their immediate supervisors who are typically called coordinators. And what has happened over the years is the number of those central staff positions, which are 12-month positions, occupied in many cases by people who used to be classroom teachers and who thought, I want to earn more money in a less stressful job where I only interact with adults. And I say, do we really need that many specialists? Let's take a look at whether we need separate specialists for all of these little areas. Maybe we can have one specialist for a bigger, broader area.
Consolidate it.
Yeah, consolidate it.
Makes better sense.
Yeah.
And it gives them something to do.
Yeah.
Next question.
Please ask your wonderful guest, Louise Epstein, is it Epstein or Epstein?
Epstein.
If FCPS should be audited by an independent organization.
Wow.
So
I didn't write that question.
Okay. So, there are audits and there are audits. And what we have right now is a situation where indeed we have an accounting firm that does a very high level audit of a very small amount of material in the financial statements. We have an internal audit group, but they only look at the topics that the school board working with the superintendent and COO want them to look at. It's very limited. And then, there are occasional circumstances where the sort of internal program research team will take a look at something. I think it might make sense, given that the money comes from the Board of Supervisors.
Yep.
Why isn't it the case that the Board of Supervisors, who have their county internal audit team and their own county auditor to the Board of Supervisors, but they have to fill that position, it's currently vacant. Why don't they let those people be the ones who take a look at what's going on with these audits? Yes, absolutely. There's a requirement under, the government accounting rules. Yes, you have a financial statement audit. We could have a broader, more in-depth one. Yes, it would cost more money. We'd have to spend more money and pay the accountants more money, but maybe that would be a good use of money.
Well, at the end of the day, you
Yes.
find out where the money's going.
That's right.
And then that's where you can readjust the budget, reallocate the money
Right.
that's being pushed in this
Yeah.
area because it's not being used properly, or it's just sitting around, or whatever it's doing with it. You can push it over. You just don't know.
Right. And I actually have a sort of interesting anecdote, which is back a decade or so ago, we had a new superintendent who I really liked, named Karen Garza. And she came in, and I looked at the published budgets for the school system where they claim to have actual data on the number of specialists and the total amount spent on specialist salaries. And I did some very simple division. And I said, gee, how is it possible that we are paying an average of $132,000 a year to these specialists in the year 2013 when teachers were making like 50 and principals were making like 100, And so I brought that to the attention of the brand new superintendent, who of course is not responsible for any of that.
Yeah.
And she said, that doesn't sound right. So she goes to her CFO, her chief financial officer, and asks for an explanation. Well, I found out later, the chief CFO was sort of mealy-mouthed, but she said, well, that's because we didn't really update those actuals and check them and make sure they were right. Well, that shows what happens when there is no truly independent person taking a hard look at all those numbers. They're sort of sloppy.
Yeah.
You know?
No, and that's what it is. I mean, you have to be audited at different times. I know in my old company, we did the same thing. We went through and just did a quick check audit and see where the money was going. Where were we losing money at?
Yeah.
And then we saw we're losing money on certain gear or certain something.
Yeah.
Then we got to figure out, okay, why are we losing money there?
That's right.
What's happening over here? How we end this? Because
and that's an in-depth program audit where you're really going through and seeing exactly where the money is being spent. And that's what we don't normally have.
that's your natural P&Ls.
Yeah.
You have to do profit and loss.
Yeah.
You got to go through. And
So-
we got to run this. We got to run the Fairfax County Public Schools like a business, because the tax dollars are coming in.
Right. And that's why I love the idea of asking our Board of Supervisors to use some of their extremely, capable staff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
To take a look at how the money is in fact spent.
Yeah.
Because perhaps they'll find everything's great in certain departments or certain offices, and maybe in others they'll say, gee, this could be better.
Yeah. And it's always room for improvement. I mean,
Yeah.
we have to be good stewards of the county money.
Yeah.
One last question. Has it ever been done, in your knowledge, a full-blown audit of all program and services that the Fairfax County Public School System has been providing?
Not a truly, what you're asking for has anyone actually gone through the entire budget and all the people and all the programs at once and checked everything out? And the answer is no. I mean, we'd be lucky if they did that with 10% of the school system every year over a rolling 10-year period, because we don't have that either.
Yeah.
And that would be a good thing to have.
Yeah.
I mean, better yet, 20%.
Yeah.
Better yet, 1/3. But we have this gargantuan school system, and it's just too hard.
And we have a budget that's going to be growing. It keeps growing.
It does keep growing.
And what they say is, okay, we need more money because XYZ. So we'll just raise taxes because they feel that this is endless amount of money and they could justify it. For me coming on that school board, I think first year is to propose to all the other school board members, we need a full-blown audit to see where all the money's going. We need to see where we're losing money and where can we shore this up to be better stewards of the tax dollars.
And I think you can do that by various mechanisms. What's interesting is the one type of program that this current school board actually did focus on to some extent was special education, because there were a whole bunch of new school board members elected whose primary focus and interest was our special education programs.
Yeah.
So they, in fact, said, we are going to spend the money to hire an outside company that knows about special ed, who will come in and take a hard look at what we are doing. Now, I'm not saying, I don't know whether that turned out to be a great audit or just a good one or just an okay one, but it was about as intense as, we've seen.
Yeah.
That's another approach.
Yeah.
Is to have that kind of thing. And again, to the extent that it is managed or supervised by someone from the county level, I think that's all for the good, because our board of supervisors deserves to know what is happening with the money that they transfer to the school system.
Well, they're accountable. They're accountable to the constituents, saying, hey, we're raising taxes and we are in charge of this. We're going to give 52% of your tax dollars off to the school, and just say, we're just going to toss it over there and we're not even going to care. They're accountable for every dollar. So
it's more work for the supervisors to do that.
Oh, but they just gave themselves a raise. So
well, just like it would be more work for the school board members if they actually had to go into the nitty gritty. And I think that's the last thing, is that school board members have often had a tendency to rely very heavily on central staff plus principals for all their information. And it's only when they happen to have a friend who's a teacher or a parent or even a kid who says, what's going on in my school? And then they say, really?
Yeah.
Well, I think there needs to be a system of digging down below the central administrators and below the principals.
Oh, no, I agree.
And going into what the teachers are saying in private, where they don't fear retaliation.
And that is the role of the school board member, is to be that accountability for the parents, for the county, for the constituents, for the taxpayer. And transparency, yes. But that's their job. Their job is to go in there and kind of make sure, hey, is everything running the way it should be? Are we being good stewards of the money?
Right. And that may require some changes to what they call the strategic governance manual.
Yeah.
Because I think of it as the delegate and, keep your distance from any detail about what's actually happening in a school. Yeah. But sometimes the only way, and I can, we don't have time, but I could give some illustrations to find out what's wrong, is to dig down and say, what? Is this what we're doing in this school? Well, how many other schools are doing the same kind of thing? And how did that happen? And school board members will never hear about that unless they do get involved and dig down into the details of what's going on.
Well, I'll give you my personal opinion on why our current school board members don't want to do that. It's because they have their own personal agendas that they want to push forward. It has nothing to do with the product of providing good product for the taxpayers. It has nothing to do with that. It's their pet projects of what they want to do as far as being an activist and having an agenda for themselves, and then to propel them to whatever else they want to go do. So they're not doing it from the heart of a community member that wants to really look at what's going on, come out with the best product. They're looking at it as their little pet projects that they want to go do. And that's what they're going to hone in on, and everything else is secondary. Oh, it's all good, because
I'll say that I have known a couple of school board members who I think really are trying hard.
Yeah.
And they did some good things. But I also see quite a few school board members who maybe only do have one project, which is a good idea sometimes, but that's the only project they really work on and do a good, a really bang up job on. And then there are others who are just using the school board as a stepping stone.
Yeah. The only project you should have is coming out with the best school system, so we have the best education for our kids.
Yeah.
That's it. Social stuff, leave it for the families. They can take care of. We have a very diverse community, different religions, different cultures. Let them take care of that. Get down to the nitty gritty of just producing a good product, to where we're educating our kids in math, reading, literacy, and the whole 9 yards in that area, so they could come out with actual knowledge and trade skills and
be ready to either go to college or do a really good job if they take a job.
But right now, it's just all this other stuff I think bogs down the teachers also, because now
Or it takes up time away from the teachers.
it does, because you
Yeah.
only have so many hours in a day.
That's right. And only so many hours in the school year.
Yeah.
And that has also been a perennial complaint of some of the teachers I knew. It's like, you keep taking the kids out for auditoriums and, whatever, special events, but how am I supposed to get through all the material in a really good way?
Yeah. It's because we have to refocus
Mm-hmm.
where we're putting our resources at. And that's where the audit comes in, where we put our resources, because you can't, the old saying, you can't pay Peter, or you can't rob Paul to pay Peter.
Right.
It's going to affect somewhere,
Yeah.
There's a give and take, only so many hours in a day. But
That's
I think we have one more question.
Yes.
It's for you, not for me.
Okay.
Just a comment.
Okay.
They said that how can the school board justify a program and say it's good if it's not being audited?
That's a
Well,
great question.
sometimes they have done things like ask the opinion of the parents, or less often the kids, and say, do you like this program that you're participating in? And if the parents say yes, that's a sign, it is a sign that the parents think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it doesn't necessarily tell us how much the kids have learned from that program.
No, it doesn't.
Or if that was the best use of their time.
Yeah.
This person said in what you just said is that programs should be evaluated.
Yes, and they do have a program evaluation group, but that group reports up to the superintendent. And of course, what that means is that it's filtered through a lot of other people who work for the superintendent, with some influence from school board members. And so you have to assume that there are some pressures on the people who are conducting those periodic program evaluations to make it
to make it sound better.
Yes, that's right. Now, if they don't like a program, they'll come out and they'll say it's not working.
Yeah.
But if they sort of like a program, they won't measure things that would tend to show that it's not actually working that great.
Well, it happens in the government, I tell you that all the time. Because people
So.
have their pet projects and they want to keep going, and they'll release some information and kind of just push some other information off to the side, or just change the tone of what the wording is. Just change the tone just a bit so it's not as harsh.
That's right.
But the only way we can actually do any accomplishments, I really find the true strength of a program is actually having true audits, which are independent audits outside of the school that comes in to take a look at things.
And to some extent, there are certain, historically at least, academic competitions that serve that function.
Okay.
But we don't like to necessarily implement those kinds of academic competitions.
Oh, I know.
So like if we're not going to give every eighth grader the American Math Competition 8, well, then we're not going to know which eighth graders are not learning as much as others.
I tell you what, we could probably have another whole segment on this. And if the crowd, everyone listening wants a certain subject tossed in, I'll reach back out to you to talk about it, because I think that we actually talked about a lot of stuff, and there's so much more. But I think we're at our time,
endless.
right? I know it's
You
endless.
guys have many comments. Rachel says bring the pride back to education. Common Core math doesn't work. Lots of
I'm still trying to figure out Common Core math, but
that would be, I would get you a different guest who would do a great job of explaining that.
I'll have to put a board up here, whiteboard for everybody.
That would be perfect. I can find you guests who can do a great job on that.
Sometimes we get so smart that we make it so complicated at times. I don't know. I'm still trying to look at some of that stuff. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what we're doing for the kids and what we're doing for our teachers. And the teachers are the crux of everything, not the administrators, not the school board. It's the teachers are the crux of it. And
they're our front line.
If we're not taking care of them, we're not going to have this fixed. We're not going to get the academic excellence. And it deals with, dealing with the budgetary aspect of, going through the money and increasing their rates and giving them the incentive to stay here, having them incentivized to live here, provide them the extra money to take certain courses so they can re-energize themselves and bring that knowledge and passion back into the classrooms. I mean, those is what we need to concentrate on. It all deals with, looking at her, Mr. Finn.
Okay.
He's saying time's up.
Okay.
But we could talk
Your
about
dog.
this even more, and going back to this, we had a great discussion. I hope, and based on the comments, you guys like what we talked about. Louise, you're a wealth of knowledge, and thank you for coming on
Oh,
board.
my pleasure,
You're a
Tony.
wealth of knowledge, and we could,
Yes.
if you guys wish to have any other subjects like this talk about, and apparently we got a comment that they want to see Mr. Finn.
Okay.
Okay. So, like we were talking, at the end of the day, it's all about the kids. It's not about the administrators. It's about the kids. And the only way we're going to accomplish this, getting school excellence or academic excellence, sorry, it's been a long day, back to Fairfax County, is we start with the crux, which is the teachers. We got to provide the teachers the respect to teach in their trade craft. We also have to provide the teachers the funding to stay in the area, because it only helps the community and it only helps the students. So what we're going to do is really concentrate on this. We're going to have some more discussions, and I know us as candidates for school board are really discussing on how we could increase teacher pay. And like I said in this podcast, some of the things I want to do, these are initiatives I want to start day one, and it's all about the teachers. If you're a teacher, you have any comments, please message in, comment to us. Let me know your thoughts. If you have suggestions, because you guys are on the front line, suggestions to make things better, let me know, and I'll definitely love to talk with you and add that to some of my initiatives. Thank you again, and Mr. Finn is closing it out.
Yes. You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
And you guys have a great time and great night. Thank you.